The winning blueprint presents.
In the lab room.
Welcome back. You're in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. What a long, arduous Thursday it has been. Luckily, though, I have made it back in the lab room, and I'm ready to get on with these two-a-days. And today we start with the New Orleans Saints. And this is a team that is mentally tough. They're a strong-minded team led by quarterback Drew Brees, and rightfully so. They've been through Katrina, which was no fault of their own, and they've been through now Bountygate, which was really all of their doing. Of course, they got a little bit of help from the league in that regard, in turning this thing into a big mess. But again, having players suspended, coaches suspended, having to, step up and play good football is going to be a test of their will and their mental strength to see how they get through this season without their head coach, Sean Payton. And so let's get into the strengths of the New Orleans Saints. Anytime you talk New Orleans Saints football, you got to talk about that offense. That offense is a high-octane, very ultra-efficient offense that, when running on all cylinders, when running at its peak performance, crushes any defense and every defense in its way. And so you take a look at what they do on the offensive side of the football, and you segue right into the next strength, and that's Drew Brees. He is a coach on the field. He is one of the most cerebral quarterbacks in the league. Pinpoint accuracy, not the tallest guy in the world. So height has always been a question with Drew Brees, but that's never affected his game. It's probably even fueled his fire even more. People have probably always told him he wasn't big enough to be a great quarterback in this league. And he was ousted out of San Diego after that shoulder injury. They had already drafted Phillip Rivers to be the quarterback of the future there. And they basically kicked him out of San Diego. And he has really stuck it to the Chargers by showing them, this is what you could have had in San Diego. We could have built something great, but instead you let me walk away, and now this is what I'm doing in the league. And he's won a Super Bowl title. He's looking for more. Last year, he broke the all-time passing yards record in a season. And so, Drew Brees and this offense is explosive, and Drew Brees is one of the best quarterbacks in National Football League. I'd take Drew Brees any day. His ability to move in the pocket, he has what they call pocket mobility. He slides his feet, avoids traffic, gets out of the way of all kinds of trash, and finds throwing lanes. Again, he's not the biggest guy, so throwing lanes are important for Drew Brees, and he finds them with ease. A lot of his balls don't get batted down, and that's surprising because, again, he's only 6 feet, so you would think he would have more passes batted down. But that offensive line does a great job of keeping Drew Brees clean for the most part, and so that offense and Drew Brees are both strengths for the New Orleans Saints. So you go on to weaknesses, and for as good as the New Orleans Saints offense has been, at times the defense can be equally as bad. I think the offense is so good that they give the New Orleans Saints defense, every opportunity to be bad, and they've taken full advantage of it. They went from a defense when Greg Williams first got there. They went from a defense that was aggressive, flying all over the football field, forcing turnovers. That defense was opportunistic. You made a mistake, they made you pay for it. I don't know if Darren Sharper not being in that secondary anymore has stopped them from forcing turnovers, but they don't force turnovers anymore. They only had 17 last year. 9 picks, 8 forced fumbles and recoveries. And so that's a weakness for this defense. They have to get more turnovers. This defense has to be better in general. They're not a good defense. Again, they were ranked 30th in pass defense, and they were ranked 24th in overall defense a year ago. And they give up a lot of yards. They give up a lot of big plays. They gave up 14 plays of 40 yards or more in the passing game last year. That was the most in the league. And that Saints offense, again, can be a gift and a curse because, a lot of times these guys don't even have time to sip a Gatorade and go over the film of what happened on the last defensive possession because Drew Brees and that offense have already scored, and now you have to go back on the field and play defense. But that's a good problem to have. I bet you ask the other 31 teams around the league, would they like that problem? They would tell you, sure, give me that problem. And so that's not an excuse for the Saints. They got to get better on the defensive side of the football, and they got to find ways to stop teams from going up and down the field on them and making it a track meet. I know the Saints offense would love nothing more than to just put points on the board and keep putting points up on the board and getting the ball back and putting more points on the board and blow teams out. Instead, they got to outscore teams because their defense is giving up points. And so, sometimes that can wear on the Saints as it did in that playoff game last year against the 49ers. The offense did everything it could to win that game, and the defense did everything and more to lose it, and that's exactly what happened in the end. The Saints defense has to be better. The Saints defense has to be better. Camp battles. And you look around the Saints, and they are a triple P. And if you don't know what that means, you have to go into the L.A.B room dictionary or glossary and figure that one out. I'll give you that one this time. Triple P means perennial playoff participant. And that's what the Saints are. They go to the playoffs every year. They are a triple P. And so with being a triple P, you don't have a lot of camp battles per se. And the Saints love veterans. So they love to have these positions already set from the year previous, but they still have a few things going on. We're not going to say they really have a lot of camp battles per se. We're going to say they have moving parts. Okay? Along the offensive line, they lost Ben Grubbs. They filled in those spots with guys that have either been waiting in the wings or guys that they feel like have potential. And so that's not really a big issue for the Saints. And their line is the least of their worries. Drew Brees has time back there. They open up running lanes for the running backs. The offensive line is going to be fine. Where you look at a couple of areas that you need to focus on for the Saints, you start at wide receiver. And behind Marcus Colston and Lance Moore, it's a mess, or I wouldn't say a mess. It's just a lot going on behind them. Those two for sure, have spots. Those are your starters. But after you get past Moore and Colston, you just have basically 4, maybe 5 guys vying for 3 spots. You take a look. You got Joe Morgan. Joseph Morgan is a receiver that I think he's already solidified a spot on the roster. They're looking to fill that Robert Meacham void in the offense. He left for San Diego in free agency. They need somebody to stretch the field and go up top and make plays, in the passing game and give them that deep threat that still has a little bit of height to stretch the defense. Joseph Morgan is right around the exact same height as Robert Meacham. He has more speed than Meacham. He's actually serving as a return man as well, so his value is added there. I think he's already solidified his spot on the roster. But then you have other guys. Devery Henderson is a guy you look at and say, are you going to be back in 2012? He's an inconsistent receiver. He also stretches the field for them. I think he'll get another shot in 2012, but you can never be certain. The Saints spent a draft pick on a fourth-round draft pick, Nick Toon, out of Wisconsin. He tweaked his, he called it a tweak of his foot, and he did that on August the 2nd. Haven't seen him since. So I don't know what kind of tweak that is, but he might have to start the season on a PUP list. They don't know when he's going to be back. He says he's responding well to treatment, but again, what does that mean when you're not practicing? So the Saints have a decision to make there. Do you put him on the PUP list? Do you save a roster spot for him? Or do you put him on IR and just say, we'll move on and you'll get a chance next year? Do you have the ability to wait for him to get healthy and leave him on the PUP list and leave a roster spot there for him? That remains to be seen. You know, they also have another guy, Andy Tanner, that they're looking at. This is a guy that can play the slot possibly. I don't know. You know, it's a lot of guys in the mix there. You also take a look. Adrian Arrington is another guy that's been with the Saints, a core special teamer, and a guy that's played a little bit of receiver for the Saints in the past. Had a strong camp this year. He's making a case for staying on the team. So it's just a lot of guys in the mix behind those two receivers. You don't know who's going to make the team. You got to stay tuned. And again, you got to keep an eye on Nick Toon because you don't know what the Saints are going to do with that situation. That's a fluid situation. We don't know what his injury situation is, and so you got to keep an eye out on Nick Toon and how that foot is doing and if he'll be able to play at all and contribute for the Saints in 2012. You also move forward to the cornerback position, and that's a weakness for them right now because they don't get the production out of the cornerback position after you get by Jabari Greer, and he's hurting right now. He's hurt, and this could be an injury that lingers on into the season and possibly throughout the whole 2012 season. And so Jabari Greer has been a consistent corner for them, but he gets beat at times. You know, they have another young corner that I like a lot in Patrick Robertson, but he's still learning the nuances of the corner position in the NFL, so he's prone to making mistakes as well. Tracy Porter is no longer there. He left in free agency, and so you got to ask yourself, who's going to step up for that other cornerback position, and who's going to step up in the nickel and the dime packages? They have several corners that they're looking at. Albert Mack, you know, another guy that's been in the league 3-4 years, came from Tampa Bay. And so can he be somebody that produces for the Saints? You look at Johnny Patrick, another young corner that they have in the mix. Corey White, same thing. Another young corner that you really don't know what he can do on the NFL football field. And so the Saints have questions at cornerback. Right now we're waiting for answers to those questions. You'll see what they do in the 2012 campaign with all of these defensive backs and who does what and who plays where. Probably the biggest camp battle for the Saints this year is at kicker. Surprisingly, John Casey has been around for 80 years, it seems like, and he's a guy that gives you great accuracy in the mid-level ranges, maybe from 40 yards in. He's good, about as good as money. But then you get out of that 40, and that's where you make your money to me in the NFL is the kicks from 40 to 49 yards. You're going to kick a lot of those. There's going to be a lot of drives that stall out at the 23, 25-yard line, 27. You got to be able to pound a 44-yard field goal through the uprights consistently in this league. You don't think that John Casey can do that on a consistent basis. And so you have to wonder if the Saints can afford to keep two kickers again. They've been doing that for the last couple of years because Garrett Hartley, their kicker, is inconsistent. And there's nothing worse than an inconsistent field goal kicker on your team because you need to be able to rely on your field goal kicker to give you 3 points when you work hard on a drive. You know, every drive does not result in a touchdown. You know, you might put together a 12-play, 70-yard drive, but you needed 83 yards for a touchdown. So you need to be able to know that you can still rely on that kicker to pound through a 37-yard field goal or a 47-yard field goal to make your drive worthwhile, to keep the momentum going, to have a team stop you, force you to kick a field goal, and then have you miss, gives the other team momentum, and it kind of deflates your team because you worked hard for those 3 points. You would like to see those 3 points added to the scoreboard, and so Garrett Hartley has a strong leg. He has the ability to kick deeper field goals, but he's just inconsistent. And so the Saints have to figure out what they're looking for. They really need to just find a kicker that gives them the balance that they need and stop fiddling around with Garrett Hartley if he's not going to be the one to get it done. But carrying 2 kickers on your roster is not the answer. And so the Saints have to figure this thing out sooner rather than later. Maybe the light bulb will come on for Garrett Hartley in 2012. You move on to the rookie watch. And the Saints were hit hard by the Bonnygate scandal. And Roger Goodell reached out and touched these guys and snatched away a few picks. And so they didn't have a first or a second round draft pick. They had to wait until the 3rd round to make their first selection. And they chose Akeem Hicks, a defensive end out of Regina, which is in Canada. And so he's someone that's going to provide depth along that line. They're getting up there in age along that defensive line. Will Smith has been playing for a while now, so they're looking for guys to come in, provide depth, and possibly be able to start down the road. That's what Akeem Hicks will provide in the 2012 season. We talked about 4th round selection Nick Toon out of Wisconsin, and he played this year. You don't know what you're getting out of Nick Toon. Can you afford to keep a roster spot warm for a guy that you don't know if he's going to be able to produce for you this year? I mean, he's been taking a lot of mental reps, but at some point you have to be able to practice and go through the motions and get out there on the field and get in sync with your offense to be able to produce adequately. And so you don't know about Nick Toon in the 2012 season. You move on to the 5th round pick. We talked about Corey White, the corner from Sanford. He's a corner that, they like to be able to play safety as well. He's got some versatility, but they're looking at him as a corner right now. And he's somebody that they're going to need to step up here shortly. It may not be right in the immediate future, but, towards the end of this season, if injuries take effect, he's going to probably have to play, And so he's going to have to learn quickly about playing the cornerback position in the National Football League, because they probably are going to have to lean on some of these guys in the back half of their cornerback group, because they're just not that strong at the cornerback position right now. Do you look at their 6th round selection, Andrew Tiller, a guard out of Syracuse? Don't know if he's going to make the team or not. Definitely depth. That line is so stout. You think that they're taking guys to provide depth, be a backup at multiple positions along the line. So if he can prove to be a guy that can come in, play both guard spots and maybe center or be a tackle, he might earn a position along that line in terms of being a backup, providing great depth along that line, and in the process, keep allowing them to keep another roster spot for another player at a different position. And also, they drafted another offensive lineman, a tackle, Marcel Jones out of Nebraska. Again, depth, guy that they're looking to work with in case somebody else decides to leave via free agency, or they just get up there in age, or they feel like their production is starting to tail off. You have guys that have been practicing with the team, either on the practice squad or actually on the team, getting reps in practice, seeing how the game is played, and then when it's their turn, they can step in and produce. That's what they're looking for from Marcel Jones. He'll be a guy that they work with and bring along, and when his turn comes, maybe he'll be able to step on the field and start for the Saints. So we move on to the experiment, and I titled this experiment, Bounties, Breeze, and Saints, Oh My. And I thought that was a fitting title because that's all you heard about this offseason when it came to the Saints was Bounty, Breeze, and his contract situation, and then there's the Saints. What are they going to do without their head coach Sean Payton for a whole season? What are they going to do without Jonathan Vilma, quarterbacking that defense? What are they going to do without Joe Vitt, who was supposed to be the next man in charge for 8 games? Oh my. So that's why I went with that title. And you go on to the research question, and it reads as follows. All distractions aside, can the Saints, without their head coach and services of a few other players now gone, muster up the intestinal fortitude to win and win big in 2012? I mean, and that's what you got to ask yourself. Can the Saints put all these distractions aside and come out on top in 2012? It would be probably one of the more remarkable stories in all of pro football if they're able to put it together this year without their head coach and find a way to get it done. If there's any team in the league that could lose their head coach and still function fully as an offense and still function fully as a team, it's the Saints, because Drew Brees is like a coach on the field. And not just for that offense. He's a stabling force for the whole team. That's why when he was a free agent in the offseason, there was never any doubt as to was he going to be back. It was just when. And I was wondering why the Saints were wasting so much time with this. He's the face of your franchise. And as a Saints fan, you shudder to think at what the Saints prospects would be without Drew Brees in the fold. And so that's not even something to talk about. Without Drew Brees, there are no New Orleans Saints right now. They're the Aints without Drew Brees. And so you knew he was going to be back. You wanted to know what was taking the Benson family so long to get this deal done. And he got back in the fold, and now he's with his teammates. He's practicing. He's playing in the preseason, and everything is all well in New Orleans right now. And a lot of that has to do with Drew Brees, because he's a calming influence on that whole organization, that whole team. He is the unquestioned leader, and he makes sure that guys are accountable and they get it done on the football field. Love Drew Brees. Hypothesis. If Drew Brees and that offense continue to click on all cylinders and the defense is improved, then the Saints will be in a discussion come January. They're going to make the playoffs, I think. I mean, because the Saints know how to get it done on the offensive end. This isn't the first time they haven't had the services of their head coach, Sean Payton. Remember, he tore his knee up last year on the sidelines and had to miss a game or two. And so, they had other coaches calling the plays, and so this isn't foreign for them. They basically got a taste of what was to come last year. So, again, Drew Brees knows this offense in and out. He's been with Payton for a while now, since 2006. So he knows what he needs to do to get this offense rolling. He knows how to get the offense in sync. And so I don't think the offense is your problem. The defense is your problem. Can you get this defense? What happened to the days of Greg Williams and that defense forcing turnovers as they did in 2009 when they won the Super Bowl? What happened to those days? We know Greg Williams is no longer the coordinator. He's no longer in the league right now because of the Bounty Gate scandal. But what happened? Can Steve Spagnuolo come in and get this defense to play football and force turnovers, be aggressive, fly around the football field? They need an infusion of youth and an infusion of some playmaking ability on that defense. I like the safety Malcolm Jenkins. He seems to be right now one of the few playmakers on that defense. They need other guys to step up. Malcolm Jenkins makes his fair share of plays on defense. I don't see him getting a lot of help, though. They need guys to step up and make plays. So we'll see if the defense can help that offense and help the New Orleans Saints win and get back to where they want to be in the 2012 campaign. Materials needed. More than a brisk Brees. In the past, Drew Brees, and really, he's never been a guy that didn't put up big numbers. So that's really not something you need to worry about. But he can't afford to not be the be-all guy for the Saints this year. He has to do it all for the Saints. Not only be the quarterback of the offense, but be the quarterback of the whole team. And so I've heard him say that his numbers may go down this year, and rightfully so. He broke the passing record, for a season, for yards in a season last year. That's hard to duplicate. I expect his numbers to come down, but he still needs to be ultra efficient. Last year he made a drastic improvement on turnovers, and I think he was hurt in 2010 a little bit and more than he let on. And he didn't want to say anything because he threw 22 interceptions. That's not Drew Brees like. Drew Brees does throw interceptions, but not to the tune of 22 interceptions. He's not a 20 turnover guy. And so he scaled those interceptions back in 2011, got the touchdown numbers way up, and he was really the driving force of that New Orleans Saints team last year. And so he's going to have to be more than just, a regular Drew Brees this year. He's going to have to be almost super Drew Brees this year. He's going to have to do everything for that team, not just the offense. Healthy stable of backs. The Saints have a really good running back situation when they're all healthy. You take a look at Chris Ivory. He's becoming expendable this year. And I meant to mention him a little bit earlier on when I was talking about the camp battles, because he's somebody that they might be looking to trade to get some kind of value for another position, maybe cornerback, because they have backs that can get it done, and Chris Ivory is probably their best trade asset right now. And they might be looking to feature him throughout the preseason just to put him on display to see if someone will bite the bait. Because if they can get Mark Ingram to stay healthy, he's a feature back in this league. He's a guy that can carry the ball, and I like his game. He just has to stay healthy. You look behind him, Pierre Thomas, another guy. When healthy, very effective in that Saints offense. You go behind him, Darren Sproles. He's the dual threat. He can get you out of the backfield and receiving or rushing the football. And so they have three guys that can get it done if healthy, and Chris Ivory becomes expendable at that point. And so you got to see if they're going to really pull the trigger on trading him or not, or they're going to leave him there as an insurance policy. Because I think if you're the Saints and you can't trade him, you have to keep him on the roster, because your backs, all of them, all three of them, have history of missing games throughout the course of a season with bumps and bruises and nicks. So you have to keep him if you can't get something for him right now, and keep him as depth, in case one of these guys go down. You look at the secondary. Secondary step up. The secondary can't be as bad as they were ranked 30th in the league last year in pass defense. Again, they gave up the most plays of 40 yards in the total in the NFL last year with 14. That's a really big number. Again, the league average is right around 7. And so they doubled that number last year. And they gave up too many big plays in the passing game. They can't afford to do that. The secondary has to step up this year. They need Jabari Greer to come back and be healthy for them, and Patrick Robinson to step up at that second corner position. And they need to play ball this year. They got to find somebody to man up that slot position, and they got to get going, because that secondary is really holding that defense back as a whole. Bring the good times back. Again, what happened to the times when the Saints got interceptions, when the Saints forced fumbles and scooped them and scored? They just want to bring the good times back. What happened to those times? If you're a Saints fan, I want to see more turnovers. If you're Steve Spagnuolo, you coming in and you want to see more turnovers. You haven't seen enough from what you've seen on film of this Saints defense. They have to be better at forcing turnovers. 17 isn't enough. 17 isn't going to get it done in the National Football League. You have to win the turnover battle. And luckily for the Saints, the offense doesn't turn the ball over a lot. So they probably still were plus in the plus-minus category, but not by many. If in fact they were, I don't know, because Drew Brees probably threw about 14 interceptions. You got to think they fumbled. They had to have fumbled 5 or 6 times and didn't get it back. So they probably were a minus in the plus or minus category, now that I think about it. And so you can't have that. Luckily for them, that offense is really good, and you can get away with being on the minus side in the plus-minus category in turnovers. Normally that's a number, that's a death sentence for your team if you don't win. Saints go marching in, and the Saints have to score touchdowns. They have to go marching into the end zone. Can't afford to kick field goals. I've already talked about how iffy that field goal situation is. The Saints have to go marching into the end zone. They can't afford to kick field goals, and you can't trust the defense to stop teams from getting in the end zone. They're giving up 3 touchdowns a game. You can't afford to kick field goals when dealing with this defense. So the Saints have to go marching in the end zone. Simple as that. Okay, we go into the data that's necessary for the Saints to achieve their goal of winning a Super Bowl in 2012. And you look at Drew Brees, 4,760 passing yards, 39 to 42 touchdown passes, 13 to 16 picks, and a 69% completion percentage. The numbers he put up last year were just out of this world. They were insane. And the number that jumped off the page, I mean, of course, we could talk about the passing yards all day long. The number that jumped off the page at me was the completion percentage. He was up over 70% completion percentage. I don't think you realize how hard that is to do. He had 71.2% completion percentage last year. That is mind-boggling. That's a lot of completions that you put in your receiver's hands and they were able to make catches on. And that speaks to the amount of accuracy that he has and the efficient play he gets out of his receivers. But that is just a mind-boggling number. And it's so hard in this league just to get to 60%, let alone 70, up over 70%. And he did that last year. That was amazing. I think he'll come down to earth a bit. And when I say that, I mean 69%. So he's not falling back too far. He's still ahead of 90% of the league in that regard. And so, 95. And so it's not a big deal. But I just thought that was amazing what he did last year. Marcus Colston, he's a guy that misses games and doesn't start and he still produces. You know what you're getting from him every single year. 78 to 83 catches, 1,080 receiving yards to 1,120 receiving yards, 7 to 9 touchdowns. Lance Moore, another guy slippery in the slot, hard to stop. Lance Moore, 62 to 70 catches, 690 to 720 receiving yards for 7 to 9 touchdowns. And that's where he gets you. He gets in the end zone. He gets the ball at the 11-yard line, makes a move, and he's in the end zone. Or he runs such a crisp route, that he catches it and you're nowhere to be found and he walks into the end zone. That's where Lance Moore earns his keep, getting into the end zone. Jimmy Graham, he emerged on the NFL landscape last year and has a chance this year to solidify himself as one of the premier tight ends in this league. And last year, with the numbers he put up, he put the NFL on notice. He told them, look, I'm here, I'm a big man, and I'm here to play football. And if you're gonna try and stop me, good luck. But I'm telling you right now, I'm going to make plays. And that's what Jimmy Graham did last year. He used his big 6'6" frame and his basketball background to box guys out, to run great routes, to catch the football and get yards after the catch. He was a menace last year. He was an absolute monster. And he's looking to duplicate that in 2012. Here's the numbers that I have for him. 85 to 93 catches, for up over 1,000 yards at 1,050 to 1,100 receiving yards, and 9 to 11 touchdowns, Darren Sproles, what you call a dual threat in this league. Not as prolific a rusher as he is a receiving threat out of the backfield. Nonetheless, he can get you either way. Darren Sproles is an 80 to 90 carry guy, which will equate to normally 580 to 620 yards when talking about Darren Sproles. And you look at catches, this is where he gets you. And you're looking for 70 to 78 catches for 690 to 710 yards and 8 to 10 total touchdowns. He's a problem out of the backfield. He's hard to stop. He's a little jitterbug. It's hard to corral him once he gets the football. He causes matchup problems. He's a matchup nightmare for linebackers and safeties. And so they got to find ways to cover this guy. It's not easy. And he's an entity unto himself And this is why I took him out of the running back group, separated him, because he's a different species. Nobody else in that running back group can quite do what he does. And so the rest of them have to do their job, and Darren Sproles has a totally different job from the rest of the running backs. So they have their own category, and theirs goes as such: 325 to 350 carries for 1,400 rushing yards and 10 to 13 total touchdowns. And they're a different group. We're talking about Pierre Thomas and Mark Ingram and possibly Chris Ivey. These guys can't catch the ball out of the backfield, but their job is to run the football and run it effectively. And that's what the Saints look to do, as they did in 2011. The Saints keep you honest. That's one thing. They love to pass the football, but they keep you honest. They're not like the Packers where 70% of their offense is going to be through the air. They run the ball very effectively. Very, very effectively. Saints defense. And they have to be better in 2012. If the Saints are going to win anything, the Saints defense has to be better. They need to force more turnovers. 17 isn't enough. And this is a large leap for them, but as bad as they were at forcing turnovers, they can turn it around in 1 year. Force 29 to 33 turnovers. You need 36 to 44 sacks. They had 33 sacks. They need to step that number up a little bit. 36 to 40 sacks. 21.2 points a game last year is what they gave up, and I have them giving up the same exact thing this year. Points weren't a problem. Even though you're giving up 3 touchdowns a game, the Saints scored 3 touchdowns during a commercial break. The Saints offense is that prolific. So you don't have to really worry about the Saints giving up 21 points a game, because the Saints already have 21 points in the game, and the game hasn't started yet. I just looked, they just scored again. So you're fine on that front. Just make sure that you can stop teams when it is necessary. You couldn't do it last year against the 49ers. Find a way to get stops, get turnovers, get the ball back into your offense's hands. 7 to 9 plays of 40 yards given up. This is where they have to improve. They gave up 14 last year. That led the league. Ouch. That is terrible. They have to be better. You can't give up big plays. Again, in their defense, they're on the field a lot because that Saints offense is so dynamic and so explosive that they score oftentimes in 3-4 plays. You're back on the field and you're tired. You just gave up a 12-play drive of your own. You didn't even get time to put the oxygen mask and get your win back. So I understand that, but in the same breath, you have to get through that. This is what training camp is for. That's why you lift all them weights. That's why you run all those sprints, so that you can be ready and physically conditioned to play an up-tempo style of football that the Saints play. So you know better than that. You have to be better in defending the pass and not giving up big plays and big chunks in the passing game. Moving right along to the independent variable. And the Saints defense, again, we've harped on it a lot, but because the offense is so good, you have to talk about the defense, and they weren't good last year. If you're the defense, you want to bring the good times back. You want to get back to that 2009 opportunistic defense. You want to force turnovers. The Saints weren't good in that department last year. And you got to think, if you go back to 2009, the offense was really good. They were great. But the defense was the catalyst for them winning that Super Bowl title. You think about how many turnovers they forced, how many touchdowns they scored on defense. How many times did that defense bail out the Saints last year in games where they fell behind and they had to come back, or games that they needed to put away and the defense put it away? Even in the Super Bowl, the defining play in that Super Bowl, if you remember, was Tracy Porter picking off a Peyton Manning pass and taking it to the house and putting a bow on that Super Bowl title. The defense was a catalyst in 2009. They have to get back to that, which leads us to our dependent variable. And if you think about it, think of how dangerous the Saints would be as a team if the defense gets turnovers and gives the Saints short fields repeatedly. The league would have to be on notice because the Saints would probably be scoring 50 points a game and the score would be 51-20. And you would get that kind of score 7 or 8 times in a season because the Saints are so dynamic on offense. So if this defense can find a way to get stops, get that offense on the field, get shorter fields for the offense by forcing turnovers, this Saints team can be dangerous. You go on to the constants, and it's Drew Brees and the Saints offense. You know, every year these guys are among the league leaders in offense. It's because of Drew Brees and his pinpoint accuracy and his knowledge of this offense in and out. He knows this playbook like the back of his hand. And so he knows where his third read is without even looking. He knows where he's supposed to be. And so when that first read isn't there, that second read, he goes to that third read immediately and strikes. And so that's what makes the Saints offense so dangerous. There's so many elements. There's so many layers to this offense that they can get you in multiple ways. And they were ranked first in the NFL in offense last year. That's something they do quite a bit. Okay, over the last 6 years since Drew Brees came over to the Saints, they've never finished worse than 6 in offense. In the last 6 years, they've never finished worse than 6. And 4 times, they were first, including last year. That's what they do. They finish first in offense. And they're a prolific offense. And again, when they're clicking on all cylinders, they are a machine that oftentimes runs over its competition, runs over the opposing defense with ease. And so this offense and Drew Brees is a constant for the New Orleans Saints. You go into the conclusion. With all the turmoil of the offseason, I think the Saints are focused and ready for the regular season. And you don't know what they're going to do, but as long as Drew Brees is your quarterback, you're going to have a shot to win football games. And Drew Brees isn't going anywhere. He's going to be there. They're going to protect him. He's going to make plays. He's going to rack up points. He's going to rack up passing yards. This offense is going to be prolific. Can the defense do their part? That's what you have to ask yourself. With Steve Spagnuolo coming over, you have to assume that he's going to make the defense better automatically. And so they might not be the 15th or the 12th ranked defense in the league, but they're not going to be in the 20s. At least you don't think they will. You think they find a way to get to 17th, be a middle of the pack defense. If they can at least do that, they're going to be a better team for it. I don't know. He might even get them into the top 15. He might get them to 15. Whatever the case, if the offense can continue to be that juggernaut that they are and the defense improves somewhat, the Saints are going to be right there when it's all said and done. I still have them winning the NFC South. That division is wide open, though, because the Panthers are a new team. The Tampa Bay Bucks are taking on a new identity under their new head coach, Greg Schiano. And you know the Falcons are out for blood this year, having lost in the playoffs again. So they're hungry. So the Saints have to play good football. There are no pushovers in that division anymore. It's a tough go of it every week. And that division as a whole plays a tough schedule. They play the NFC East. They play the AFC West. In past years, you could say, hey, we could take 3 out of 4, possibly all 4 of those AFC West games. Those teams in the AFC West are getting better. And so the Saints are going to have to play good football. I said all that to say this. I still have the Saints going 12-4. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they went 12-4 last year. And so, 13-3, 12-4, whatever they went last year, I got them going 12-4 this year, and I have them winning the NFC South. And they could easily be 11-5 or 10-6, but I don't see them going past that. 10-6, depending on how they go with the Falcons, that could probably still win you the division. If you beat the Falcons twice, or you win more games in the division than the Falcons, but you split with them, that 10 wins probably can still get you the division crown. 11-5 wins that division this year. 12-4 definitely wins that division. 12-4, you're jockeying for home field throughout the playoffs at that point in the NFC. So we will see what 2012 holds in store for the New Orleans Saints. It's going to be a bumpy road at times, but they've been through adverse times before and come out of them stronger than before, and I look for them to do the same throughout this process and this Bounty Gate scandal. So that's going to do it for the Saints, and we're going to move on to the Atlanta Falcons on the other side of this lab quiz. We'll be back.
Lab quiz. Lab quiz.
ATL Georgia, what do we do for you? Bulldogging foes, and we're back with the Atlanta Falcons. We're in the South, Atlanta Falcons. And these guys are an interesting group of individuals. You start with Matt Ryan, a.k.a. Matty Ice, one of the best nicknames in all of football, probably behind Megatron. Matty Ice. He's got the nickname, but his production in the playoffs doesn't match the great nickname. The Falcons are all about the playoffs now. They're a triple P. Okay? And so when you think about the Falcons, they're a perennial playoff participant. Nobody cares about the regular season. Of course, you have to get to the playoffs first. First and foremost, that's what you have to do. But no one cares about, Matt Ryan throwing for 4,000 yards anymore. Nobody cares about the numbers that these receivers are going to put up because they have two of the best in the league. But it all comes down to what you do in the postseason now. And Matt Ryan is 0-3. Right now, he has not shown me that he has the propensity to be a winner. If you're not a winner, guess what? You're a loser. And so right now, I'm not calling Matt Ryan a loser, but you're not a winner. Do the math. Let's get into the strengths. All right. The Falcons' offense is one of the best in the league. They have a great balance. Half of the time, they're an explosive, high-octane offense. The other half of the time, they're as consistent gets on the offensive end. And so you put that blend together, and you have the Atlanta Falcons. And Matt Ryan heads up that offense. But the real strength there is their wide receiver tandem. You're talking about Roddy White, one of the most consistent receivers in NFL history. And when I looked at his numbers, I was kind of blown away because you don't realize just how consistent Roddy White has been since he entered the National Football League. And you think about it, he's one of 7 receivers in NFL history to post 5 straight seasons of plus 80 catches, over 1,150 yards receiving, and at least 6 touchdowns. Only 7 guys have done that, and he's one of them. Those are huge numbers in the National Football League, especially for doing it year in and year out. In a lot of those seasons, he had 100-plus grabs. This isn't a guy that's just barely getting over 80. He gets 110, 107, 100 grabs. He had 100 last year. And so, I had a friend ask me, do you think that Julio Jones's emergence is going to take away from Roddy White? No, I don't. And Roddy already came out and said, I don't want to be the most targeted receiver in the NFL. I don't. And he doesn't need to anymore. He's got help now. And Julio Jones is going to take some of that pressure off. And the beautiful thing about Roddy White's game is that he can take you deep. He's got the speed to go deep, but he does the intermediate stuff as well. He gets 5 yards on 3rd and 4. He gets 7 yards on 3rd and 5. He can do everything. He's Mr. Consistent. You flip that and go on the other side of Roddy White to Julio Jones, and he's helping usher in the new breed of NFL wide receiver. And it's scary to think that this is how they make them now. They didn't used to make them like this, back in the day. If you were 6'4", you were a wiry guy like a Herman Moore, long frame, had a large catch radius. You probably weren't the fastest guy. You weren't a burner, but you could move, for your height. That's not how they make them anymore. Julio Jones is 6'4", 230, 235, can jump out of the gym, and runs a 4.3 40. That's insane. Okay? The only person more freakishly talented in the league at his position than him is Megatron. Megatron. Heavens to Megatron. That's the only person more freakishly athletic than Julio Jones. And it's crazy because as I was doing this, I watched the Falcons game on television. They had a preseason tilt against the Cincinnati Bengals, and Terrence Newman was covering him. And on a play, Terrence tried to jam him at that 5-yard mark, and Julio, in stride, without breaking a step, takes one arm and takes Terrence Newman and says, "Get out of the way." Throws him into the sidelines, and guess what? Terrence Newman got pass interference called on him for impeding Julio Jones' progress. How dare you get in my way, Terrence Newman? I toss you to the side and you get a penalty for your troubles. That's the kind of receiver you're getting in Julio Jones. He's the new breed of receiver in this league. That's a dangerous prospect if you're a cornerback in this league. What do you do when 6'4", 230, pure physical specimen comes at you? Full speed. With the football, what do you do? With the football, without the football, you got to be nervous if Julio Jones is running at you. Because he's a big, big man with bad intentions. He's going to be dangerous for the Falcons. He's going to be dangerous around the NFL. And this tandem, again, for the next 5 years, has a chance to be something great. And there's a lot of mileage already on Roddy White, but his game is one that can age like fine wine because he does everything. He does the little things. He gets the ball so often. He's going to catch, even when he's in his 13th season, he's going to catch 80 balls. He's going to have the ability to still catch 80 passes. So they're going to be dangerous, and that's one of the strengths of the Falcons. The other strength that they have, they just acquired. And they need this because one of the reasons they lose in the playoffs every year is because they can't stop teams from scoring in the passing game. Now, last year, they just looked a mess in the playoffs. I was so disappointed with their performance against the Giants last year. They looked like an inept offense. They looked like a team that didn't belong in the playoffs. They looked like a deer caught in headlights. Now they have 3 cornerbacks that could start in the National Football League. You talk about Asante Samuel, who they just acquired from the Philadelphia Eagles. Brent Grimes, who I think is the best of this group. And Donta Robinson. All of these guys have been starters, can be starters, will be starters for the Atlanta Falcons in 2012. And so they have a group now that if you're not careful with the football, you will pay. And they can go 3 deep. Their secondary is looking and shaping up to be really good. I like their safeties. Thomas Deku just got a 5-year deal. William Moore, I feel like is a big playmaking safety. He's always around the football, not afraid to stick his nose in there and be physical and make tackles. And so I like this secondary. I like what they bring to the table. And now that they can go 3-4 deep at the at the cornerback position, that helps that defense immensely because they have the Saints in their division. They have to be able to stop the pass. If you're going to win in this league, especially in the NFC, with the quarterbacks that the NFC has, with the Aaron Rodgers, with the Tony Romos, with the Eli Mannings, with these guys who can go and throw for 5,000 yards in any given season, 4,000 yards. With the pressure that these teams put on you in the passing game, you have to be able to stop them or at least slow them down. And the Falcons can say, we have as good a chance as anybody of slowing down teams with the corners that we put on the football field. So that's a strength for the Falcons. You move on to weaknesses. And it's their offensive line. And their offensive line is not putrid. It's not horrible. It's not offensive. They just have certain spots that need to be addressed. And the reason why it's a big issue for them is because it's their left tackle. One of the positions is their left tackle. And that's Sam Baker. You can't have your quarterback's blind side being one of the weaker spots on your offensive line. And Sam Baker, he is the model of inconsistency in this league at the left tackle position. You look at Sam Baker, and you don't know what you're getting. He's a mixed bag. You don't know what you're getting from game to game. You get a game out of Sam Baker where you're thinking, hey, look, Sam can do this. He can turn a corner. That was a good game. And then 2 weeks later, Sam Baker looks like the worst tackle in the league, constantly getting beat by quicker, more athletic defensive ends and getting beat off the ball and having Matt Ryan be uncomfortable in the pocket. And so they're not looking to replace him yet. They want to give him one more chance. But they're starting to make plans to move forward from Sam Baker if he can't get it done. And it may be this year. This is really his last chance to show that he can play left tackle in the National Football League. You move on to the right guard position, and they have a young guy, Garrett Reynolds, at the right guard position. I think that people are too hard on him. It was his first year really having an extensive playing time in the league. And so he struggled at times, but he also showed you that he can do this and he can play the right guard position if given time, if allowed to mature within the offense. The thing about it is the Falcons are in win now mode. They don't have time for guys to learn on the fly. So he's going to have to step his game up. But I think his situation is different from Sam Baker's in the sense that Sam has been doing this for 4 or 5 years. He has to play better. They drafted him with an early round draft pick for him to come in and shore up that left tackle position. Garrett Reynolds, on the other hand, was drafted later on, and he's a guy that didn't come in the league with big expectations. He got a chance. He's making the best of it. And if given time, I think he can prove to be an asset for the Falcons instead of a weakness. And so I think that he'll be fine. I think Garrett will be fine. But Sam Baker is somebody you must keep a watchful eye on because he is scary. He can be scary for you at times if you're an Atlanta Falcons fan because he's protecting your quarterback's blind side. And there's nothing worse than getting your quarterback lit up from his blind side and he doesn't see it coming. Good, easy way to get him hurt, get a concussion. Easy, and Matt Ryan's had a few of those. And an easy way to force a turnover that can go for a touchdown. You go to camp battles. And again, the Falcons are a triple P. They're not going to have a lot of camp battles. They have a lot of areas where you have to look and say, okay, what are you doing here? What are you doing there? They do have a few camp battles, however, and so we can talk about those really quick. Backup quarterback, Chris Redman. Watched him last night. Wasn't overly impressed. Wasn't down on him. He did throw a red zone pick. You can't have those. But the Falcons trust him at the backup quarterback position. I thought this year this was John Wilson Parker's time to push him and maybe push him out of the door as backup quarterback. He seems to be regressing a little bit. They also have another young and upcoming quarterback in Dominique Davis, who I watched last night, and I'm going to tell you what, I was impressed with what I saw. They talked to Tony Gonzalez on the sidelines, and he said, look, this guy has been showing up and showing out in camp. And I think that if you're the Atlanta Falcons coaching staff, you can't be but impressed at what this guy has been doing and what he brings to the table. He's got an added element of athleticism and speed. He can get out of the pocket, make things happen with his legs when the play breaks down. He has a strong arm. He's accurate from what I've seen thus far. I like it. I want to see more, but he could challenge for a quarterback roster spot. And if so, the Falcons aren't carrying for a quarterback. Somebody has to go. The question is, do they trust any of these guys enough to unseat Chris Redman as second quarterback? Or are they going to leave Chris Redman as the second quarterback, which I fully expect them to do because they trust Chris Redman. If Matt Ryan goes down with a concussion for 2 weeks, they know Chris Redman can step in and go 1-1 or 2-0 in his absence. Whereas these other young guys, you just don't know what they can do. They don't have any NFL game experience. So I think Redman will be your second guy. John Parker Wilson can be in trouble here, though. If he can't step his game up in the preseason and show the coaches why he's been around for the last 2 seasons, Dominique Davis looks really sharp. And he could easily unseat John Parker Wilson as the Falcons' third quarterback. You move on, and they have one receiver position available for the Falcons. And it's really 2 guys going after it. You look at Kevin Cone, and then you also have to look at James Rodgers. Now, his brother, Jaquez Rodgers, is on the roster as a backup running back for the Falcons, and he looks to get a lot of carries this year to spell Michael Turner. But James Rodgers is interesting because he's trying to make the roster as a return guy and a receiver. He did not look good at receiver last night. Was not impressed with what he did. In fact, I was a little bit disappointed at a guy who's trying to make the team. He did not help himself. Now, the only thing that can keep him around is if he can double as a special teams guy and prove to them that his worth on special teams is worth him staying on the roster. I don't think he'll do that because the Falcons have options at that special teams return position. They have options there. He's not a necessity there, and he's not a big play guy to where you can't say, I can't let this guy go. And so with that being said, I don't think he's going to beat out Kevin Cone. He has more upside at the wide receiver position than does James Rodgers. And so I think Kevin Cone will lock down that last final receiver roster spot on the Falcons roster. And so you go on and you look at the middle linebacker position. Not a battle in camp, but just something that's noteworthy that you have to keep an eye on. The Falcons lost Curtis Lofton, their ever dependable middle linebacker in free agency, to a divisional foe, the Saints. So you take away from the Falcons and you add a strength to the Saints. 1 point for the Saints on that one. So the Falcons have to address that. They have to put somebody in there. Enter Akeem Dent. He's a linebacker out of Georgia, second year in the league. They've been grooming because they knew this day was coming. They didn't think they would be able to afford Curtis Lofton. And they were right. And so Akeem Dent has been groomed, and now he's going to get his chance to start. He has a concussion right now, so he didn't play last night. So I really didn't get to break his game down like I would have liked to. But I know a little bit about Akeem Dent. I know he's an instinctive linebacker. He's not really going to wow you with his play, but he's going to make all of the solid plays that he's supposed to. And Mike Smith likes guys like that. Guys that can play multiple positions, guys that are reliable and dependable. You know, they might not force turnovers or they might not make the most plays in the world. But if they're supposed to be in the A-gap, he's going to be in the A-gap. And he's going to fill that A-gap up. You know, he may not make the tackle, but he's not going to leave a gaping hole for a running back to cut back into and run for 47 yards. He's going to do his job. And Mike Smith loves that about Akeem Dent. Watch Akeem Dent this year and see if there's a drop-off at that middle linebacker spot, or does he continue to keep that level play that the Falcons have gotten over the last 4 years with Curtis Lofton. All right, so we go into the rookie watch now. And the Falcons traded a king's ransom last year to acquire Julio Jones. So they didn't have a first nor a second round selection. A first round selection. And so, you know, their draft was a little slim. Their first pick that they had was in the second round. It was the guard center combo player, Peter Kahns, out of Wisconsin. Again, if you're going to go looking for offensive line help, the Big Ten is always a place you want to, the Big Ten is always a place that you want to start. Wisconsin is known for churning out their fair share of good offensive linemen, and Peter Kahns is no different. He's going to come in, and if any of these guys slip at these guard positions, I've already told you, they got their eye on the right guard, Garrett Reynolds. If Garrett Reynolds slips up, Look for Peter Kahns to be rating in the wings to step in and get an opportunity to show what he can do. And he probably won't disappoint. So it's a make or break year for a lot of guys along that line, because these young guys are coming in and they're chomping at the bit to get a chance to show what they can do. You look at the third round selection, another tackle. I keep calling them the Lions. The Falcons, are ready to make the necessary changes along this line. They don't have time. They're in win now mode. They don't have time for guys to continue to try to find their way when they've had opportunities to sort their issues out for 3 or 4 years. I'm talking about Sam Baker in this instance. They drafted Lamar Holmes to be his replacement. If Sam Baker is not ready to make that leap this year to be a consistent player that they could rely on at the left tackle position, they're ready to plug Lamar Holmes in there and let him play. They'd rather take lumps with Lamar Holmes than continue banging their head against a brick wall with Sam Baker. So these guys along this offensive line for the Atlanta Falcons have to step up this year, because if they don't, their jobs will not be there for them in 2013. Fifth round selections, Brady, the fullback out of Wisconsin again, Brady Ewing, and the defensive end Jonathan Massaquoi from Troy. The sad part about one of these selections, that being Brady Ewing, was that he was going to be a key contributor on that offense. He was going to push Mike Cox for that fullback position, and he's a heck of a lead blocker. Brady Ewing is not afraid to stick his nose in there and put a hat on somebody, and he was going to open up some holes in that Falcons run game, and he can also catch the ball out of the backfield. He's more than adequate at doing that, but he tore his ACL in practice in camp, and so he's going to miss the whole 2012 campaign. I wish him a speedy recovery, and it's going to be a long road back to health for Brady Ewing. But again, that's the nature of the beast in the NFL. You look at Jonathan Massaquoi, he's going to provide depth for the Falcons along that defensive line. I like what they're doing at defensive line. The Falcons have so many pieces. Abraham, Babineau. You look at a guy that I've liked for a long time and have waited for him to explode, and that's Lawrence Sidbury, the talented, ultra-talented defensive end out of South Carolina. You know, he's got all the measurables, all the attributes. He needs to put it together. He flashed last night. I like what I saw out of him. I need to see more of that out of him. You know, they got Ray Edwards in free agency. He wasn't right last year. He didn't produce the way that his contract says he needs to. I'm looking for a better year out of Ray Edwards. They have pieces on that line, and he's going to add depth to that. That Falcons defense is shaping up to be a good defense. On paper, they look good. They got to come out and produce, though. Sixth round selection, Charles Mitchell, strong safety out of Mississippi State. I like the safety position. He's going to add depth. He's not challenging to start. He's not challenging for a position of note. Right now, he's just looking to come in, provide depth, add special teams value. You know, if he can show the coaches in practice that he can add value on the defensive end right now, then maybe he'll see time. But right now, the Falcons have a good core at the safety position. So that'll be a long uphill battle for Charles Mitchell. So you move on to the seventh round selection, the defensive tackle Travian Robertson, South Carolina. Again, rotational depth. He might not even make the roster that's so deep at defensive tackle. If he does, he'll be the third, fourth, fifth tackle off the bench. You know, they have a rotation. They have guys that are interchangeable that can play multiple positions along that line. So him making the roster right now looks like a long shot, but you never know. Moving on to the experiment. It's entitled Dirty Birds. Keep it nice and simple. The old classic Dirty Birds. And so the Falcons have to find a way to get it done in 2012 when they make the playoffs. It's no longer an issue or a matter of if. It's when they get there, what are you going to do? Let's get into the research question. Can Matt Ryan keep the regular season consistency, and add some postseason success to help the Atlanta Falcons take the next step and possibly become a Super Bowl contender. Look, I already told you how I feel about Matt Ryan. The Falcons' success hinge upon Matt Ryan and his ability to produce in the playoffs. Okay? You want to be called Matty Ice? And again, that's one of the dopest nicknames in all of football. But you can't have a nice, sweet nickname and not live up to it. If you're going to be cold as ice, if you're going to be heartless, if you're going to be cold and be Matty Ice, you got to be cold. You got to go in the playoffs with that cold, hard stare and give it to the defense. You got to be ready to lead this offense. Take the bull by the horns and lead this team to wherever it is that they're going. So far, where they've been going is home. And you've been the one in the driver's seat. Everybody buckled in? Because we going home. And you've been the guy driving that car home. You have to be the one to take the bull by the horns and say, hey, this car is going to the next round. Everybody get in your seats. Buckle in. It's going to be a long ride because we're not going home this time. We're going on to the next round and beyond. That's what your job is in 2012, Matt Ryan. Get this team back to the playoffs, win a playoff game, and then go from there. Get the playoff monkey off your back, and then go from there. Hypothesis. If the Atlanta Falcons offense, powered by their rising receiver tandem and Matt Ryan, coupled with a good Atlanta Falcons defense, can continue to be consistent, then the Falcons will give themselves a chance to compete in the playoffs and put their past failures behind them. It's that simple. Matt Ryan plays better, plays up to his capabilities with that wide receiver tandem who's going to be among the best in the league. That defense are growing into something that can be special. Again, I like 2/3 of that defense. That linebacker position has some questions. Akeem Dent, what is he going to do? The depth behind him. You had Lofo Tutupu at that linebacker. I liked what he could bring to the table. He tore his pec muscle. They had to cut him. He had already been out of football all of 2011 as it was, and so they didn't have time to wait for him to heal and leave him a roster spot. No need. So they just cut him. So they had to bring back Mike Peterson, and Mike Peterson doesn't have anything left in the tank. So the depth at the linebacker position behind your starters, because I love Witherspoon. I think that he's a playmaker. He's a guy that's always around the ball. He's flying from left to right. Sean Witherspoon is a playmaker on that Falcons defense, and so I like him. Jury's still out on Akeem Dent. You have to see what he's about. And that other linebacker position is a question mark. And so if you're the Falcons, the line looks good, the secondary looks good. What are you going to get out of your linebackers? Can you make plays in the secondary? Can you get sacks, get pressure, force turnovers from your defensive line? Can your linebackers be stout in the run game? We'll see. You get into materials needed. The first thing that you think of is Matt Ryan. And so I got him on my mind because without his production, they wouldn't get to the playoffs. But he's not giving me what he gave me through the regular season in the playoffs. And they need to take that next step. This isn't a young team anymore. They have guys who've been to the playoffs 2 and 3 times now. They're seasoned. They need to take that next step. Are you going to be the San Diego Chargers that make it to the playoffs every year and do nothing when you get there? Or are you going to be this team that actually threatens to do something? See the difference between the Chargers, those Chargers with LaDainian Tomlinson at running back with Phillip Rivers. They actually won games in the playoffs. They actually made it to an AFC championship game. You're still trying to win a playoff game. You need to get that monkey off your back. And so with the materials needed, the first thing up is Matty Ice don't melt. In the playoffs, You have to be as cold as ice. You have to be rock solid. When the pressure is its greatest, it heats up in the playoffs. It gets hot. The pressure is turned up. The heat is turned up in the kitchen. And guys who aren't ready, guess what? They fold, they melt in the playoffs. So right now, you're melting in the playoffs. That heat, that pressure is too great for you. You're melting in the playoffs. You need to step up and rise up to the occasion in the playoffs. When that pressure is its greatest, when that light is its brightest and it's shining and it's white hot, you don't need to melt. You need to be that solid block of ice that isn't going anywhere. You want to be Matty Ice? Take that next step. Be that solid, rock solid block of ice in the playoffs for your team. Lead them to victory. They need you to lead them. You can't lean on Michael Turner all the time. You guys give him 900 carries every season, and by the time the playoffs come around, he's dead tired. He's a broken down man. He gets in the playoffs, and he's looking for somewhere to lay down. And I don't blame him. When you keep giving me 309, 311, 340 carries a season, I'm going to be tired. I'm going to be hurting come January. And so you can't rely on Michael Turner to be a burner in the playoffs when you ran him into the ground throughout the course of the regular season. Now that's when you need to step up. And so what are you going to do this year? Are you going to melt? Or are you going to remain that solid block of ice that your team needs in the playoffs to move on? Falcons receivers. Falcon wide receiver duo, power up. That's what the Falcons need their receivers to do. Power up. That duo is so special. They have the ability to put forth one of the best receiving years we've ever seen by a duo in NFL history. And I feel confident in saying that if Matt Ryan can get them the ball, if that offensive line can be consistent in front of him, give him time to push that ball down the field. Julio Jones is an absolute beast of a man. And so he's going to get open. He's going to make plays. We know what Roddy White can do. I'm not even going to question what he's going to do. He's going to put up 90 catches, 85, 90, 95, 100 catches for over 1,100 yards. I'm not worried about Roddy White. But Julio Jones is the wild card, and I know he's ready to break out. He's a monster. So you're looking for this wide receiver duo of the Falcons to power up. Defense, get better. Cut and dry, straight to the point. Defense needs to be better, force more turnovers, be more consistent, get more sacks and pressure on the quarterback. This Falcons defense has the ability to climb into the top 10. They have the talent. It's there. They just have it. It has to come to fruition on the football field. Win one for Tony. Look, man. Tony Gonzalez, that being Tony Gonzalez who I'm talking about, has already come out and said that he's 95% sure that he's retiring after the season. And so anytime you start contemplating retirement and start talking about percentages and what you're going to do, you've already sort of mentally checked out. And so really this is probably his last year is what he's saying. You know, they've got to come within, a last second stop of making it to the Super Bowl for Tony Gonzalez to come back next year. If they go out in the first round of the playoffs again, he's probably just going to hang them up. And I say win one for Tony. I'm not talking about a Super Bowl. This man has never won a playoff game. Somebody help this man. Get this man a playoff win. Okay? He's been with Kansas City when they were a high-power offense every year with Trent Green, Priest Holmes, Larry Johnson. They never won a playoff game. He comes to Atlanta with this high-octane offense, but yet consistent offense. They never won a playoff game. Matt Ryan is 0-3. Somebody get this man a playoff win. Please. He deserves one. Throw the man a bone. He's a Hall of Fame tight end, one of the best tight ends to ever lace him up. Get the man a playoff W on the way out the door. Please. Will you? Guys, Tony deserves it, man. He's a good guy. Data. Matt Ryan. 4,350 passing yards. 30 to 33 touchdowns. 13 to 16 interceptions, 62% completion percentage. All doable numbers, all career highs if he does it. Why not? Roddy White, 89 to 96 catches. And those catches are coming down. He had 100 last year. They're going to come down because Julio Jones is going to get more passes thrown his way. But yet Roddy is still going to be ever productive as always. Because he's still going to have 1,150 to 1,190 receiving yards and 7 to 9 touchdowns. Typical Roddy White numbers. Julio Jones, going to step it up a notch this year. Didn't quite make it over that 1,000-yard threshold. He'll get it this year. 79 to 85 catches for 1,090 to 1,120 receiving yards, 7 to 9 touchdowns. Very doable numbers. Tony Gonzalez. Man, does this guy get it done year in or in year out or what? I mean, he's so good at what he does. He's so crafty. He's such a veteran. He gets it. He knows how to get open. He knows the little subtleties and nuances of the position, and he uses it to his advantage. Look for Tony Gonzalez to have 70 to 77 catches in his 16th year of service in the NFL for 720 yards, 6 to 8 touchdowns. He's still doing it at a higher level than 80% of the tight ends in this league. It is amazing what this man is still doing at his age. And honestly, if he didn't want to hang it up, he could probably do it for another 3 or 4 years and still be playing at a high level and ultra productive. Tony Gonzalez is what you want out of a tight end. And the league is going to miss Tony Gonzalez when he's gone. Again, you need to get one for Tony. Michael Turner. Michael Turner. These guys, the Falcons run Michael Turner into the ground. Now, he's 30, and usually that is the over-the-hill age for running backs. But he's a young 30 in terms of NFL experience because he was a backup for about 3 years with the Chargers, so his legs were fresh when he came to Atlanta. They have taken any kind of extra life on the end of his career that he gained by having been a backup in San Diego. They have taken that and ran it into the ground. That man is right at 30 where the rest of the backs who came in and started from day one are. He has no extra, years left on the end of his career because he started out as a backup. They've taken those away with all these 300 attempt carries, seasons that he's had in Atlanta. And so this might be the last good year of Michael the Burner Turner you get. So relish in it, enjoy it, because you guys have did this to yourself. You ran this man into the ground, and you wonder why he's looking for somewhere to fall down when the playoffs begin, because he's dead tired. You need to scale back his carries, and I've done so for you. Will you do that? That's the question. 250 to 275 carries, and that's still a lot of carries. I really would prefer it to be 225 to 250, but knowing the Falcons, they're going to continue to ride this man like the workhorse that he is for 1,125 to 1,175 rushing yards. 9 to 11 touchdowns scored for Michael Turner. He's a big force in the red zone. He's so hard to bring down with those monster thighs of his. He's hard to bring down. He's a load in the red zone, and he scores touchdowns. Falcons D, you have to force turnovers this year. You didn't really do a good job of it last year. So 29 to 33 turnovers isn't asking much from you. You just need to force more turnovers. Get the ball back into that offense's hands so that they can do more damage. 36 to 40 sacks. You were at 33 a year ago. Not that far of a climb, just an extra couple of sacks. Maybe if Lawrence Sidbury plays more, he can produce more, and he can up that number. And Ray Edwards is going to be better this year. Maybe he gets a few more sacks. 20.2 points a game. Just a shade under 3 touchdowns given up, and that's perfect. That's where you want to be if you're the Falcons, because that offense is good for 3 touchdowns a game. And so if you can keep teams under 3 touchdowns, you'll probably win a lot of games if you're the Falcons. 7 to 9 plays of 40 yards given up in the passing game. And look, Falcons gave up 8 last year. That's right in the middle of 7 to 9. That's right where they want to be. That's right where they'll probably be this year with these corners. Maybe it's even less. Who knows? We'll see. Asante Samuel likes to take chances, likes to be nosy. He got beat on a deep ball tonight against A.J. Green. What a specimen he is. That guy is a piece of work. Man, is he going to be just an awesome receiver in this league. He catches everything, and I don't care where it's thrown. He's a monster. Back to the Falcons, though. Gosh, that man he's something else. You go on to the independent variable, and the Falcons were extremely regular on defense last year. And what I mean by that is they were 20 against the pass, 19 in sacks with 33, 17 in points allowed, 12th overall. And nothing special there. Everything was modest. Average plus average plus average plus average equals average. Divide that by average and you get average. And that's what the defense was last year. Average. Try to make more splash plays. Try to be a difference maker on the defensive side of the ball. Get more turnovers. Do more things that impact the football game. It's okay to get stops and get teams to punt. But you help the offense by getting more turnovers because you don't get enough 3 and outs to give your team great field position like the elite defenses in this league. You don't stop teams from scoring at an elite rate. You're still giving up over 20 points a game. So why not get turnovers? Why not give your offense shorter fields? If you can do that, again, offense gets the ball, they get more opportunities to score, shorter fields. You're a better football team for it. If the offense can score more points, you get to do more on defense. You get to take more risks. You get to try more blitzing. And so you get a chance to make more plays. That's the dependent variable. The constant for the Falcons is Tony Gonzalez. And throughout his career, he's been a constant wherever he's been, whether it's been Kansas City or now with the Falcons. He's been a model of consistency in this league. At the tight end position, you're not going to find a tight end more consistent than Tony Gonzalez over his illustrious career. And so when he's gone, they're going to miss his production because every year you can pencil Tony Gonzalez for at least 70 catches, for at least 800 yards, and for at least 7 to 9 touchdowns in the passing game. And so the Falcons are going to miss his production when he's gone, and they're going to have to find someone to step in and take his place when he's no longer there. But Tony Gonzalez has been a constant wherever he's been, and he's been that for the Falcons. He's been that and more when they got him from Kansas City. He was all that they bargained for, and he's exceeded their expectations because he's older, and you thought that his game would have tailed off by now. And it has to a degree. He's not the guy that got 1,100 yards or 12 or 14 touchdowns with Kansas City, but he's still putting up great numbers for a tight end. And so you got to respect what Tony Gonzalez has been able to do, and he's a constant for the Atlanta Falcons. Conclusion. The Atlanta Falcons need to be wary of a tough start to their schedule. This scares me if you're an Atlanta Falcons fan because you start with out of your first 4 games, 3 of those are on the road. You start with your first 3 or 4 on the road, and they're not easy. You start out at Kansas City. That's a tough place to play football. You go the next week, you're on the road again. No, you come home and you go and you play Peyton Manning. If you don't win that game and you start 0-2, then you go back on the road to San Diego the next week and follow that up to a trip to Washington. You could start 0-4, 1-3. You want to start at worst case that stretch 2-2. I could see you guys easily beating Washington. I could see you beating, because you're such a good team at home, I could see the Falcons beating the Broncos at home. But you got to find a way to win games on the road as well. And so if you start that stretch 1-3 or 0-4, this could be a sign of things to come for your season because it doesn't get much easier after that. You get the Panthers, you play the NFC East. You play a lot of tough games. You were second in the division last year, so you get second place teams. So you get the Lions, you get the Cardinals. These aren't easy games, and so you have a tough stretch ahead of you. And so if you're the Falcons, you need to start fast. Find a way to get it done early on. Set the tempo for the team moving forward in the season. If you can find a way to get to your bye week at 500 or better, your bye week is week 7. You need to be 3-3, 4-2 at that bye week. If you're anything less than that, I don't know if you're going to make the playoffs. I have full confidence that you will find a way to be 3-3 at the bye, at least 3-3. You might be 4-2, who knows? But I have confidence that you'll at least be 3-3, weather the storm, and play good football after your bye. I have you at 10-6. 10-6 is good enough for a wild card spot in the playoffs. And again, just get a ticket with your name on it to the dance. Do what you can when you get there. You're going to get your ticket if you do all the things necessary to do so. What are you going to do when you get there is the real question for the Atlanta Falcons. You have to play great football in the playoffs. No more lackluster performances. No more lackadaisical approach to the playoffs. Matt Ryan, the playoff stage, the lights are bright. They're hot. We know this. You know this. You're Matty Ice. Are you going to melt or are you going to stay cool? We're going to see. I have you at 10-6, and you have a chance to do something if you can get through your arduous schedule this year. And that's going to be a touchdown. Throw them up. So that leads me to my extra point that I want to tack on. Preseason in full swing. I watched a couple of games tonight. Packers played the Browns. Brandon Weeden looked pretty solid. The Browns have a little something. I've always liked Montario Hardesty, the running back out of Tennessee. He's been injured. He's healthy now. If Trent Richardson can't get his act together, they got a guy that can tote the rock in Montario Hardesty. The Browns need to find a way to get talent on the field. The receiver that they got out of the supplemental draft, Josh Gordon, he played extensively last night with the injury to Muhammad Massaquoi, and he looks solid. I like what I see. He's physical. He can go get the football. He had a drop yesterday, but it happens. Greg Little looked really good. So the Browns are coming along. Weeden looked good. He was like 12 of 20 for 118 yards or 108 yards, something like that. Rather pedestrian numbers for the amount of attempts and completions he had, but still, you want to see the maturation. He took what the defense gave him. He was sharp. Guys didn't help him all the time. He did have a few drops. Those numbers could have been more like 14 of 20 for about $120, but they dropped a couple footballs. But it happens. Again, he was sharp. They got the ball out of his hands quick. He was decisive. He made good decisions with the football. Didn't force anything. I like what I saw from Brandon Weeden. If he gets a running game with Trent Richardson in there, Montario Hardesty looked good last night. So, sky's the limit for these guys if the Browns can get them to produce. You need to start finding ways to get talent. Evan Moore at the tight end position, he looked good last night as well. So I was able to watch football tonight, and I was able to watch the Packers game. And so I seen a little bit there. I saw a lot out of the Bengals. I told the Bengals they needed to show me that they were for real, and that combination of Andy Dalton to A.J. Green looks official. Those guys look bona fide. And A.J. Green, again, he's so good already. He's so polished already that it's scary what he can do in this league, what his upside is. If Andy Dalton can be the guy he was last year, but better, and they continue to grow together, A.J. Green is going to be a machine at the wide receiver position in this league. I love this guy's game. He doesn't drop the football. He catches everything, and he makes it look easy. Woo, they look good as a tandem. So more preseason football coming up tomorrow on Friday. And so keep your eyes peeled. There are a lot of games tomorrow night. The Panthers are playing. What is Cam Newton going to look like? They didn't look good in their first preseason game. What are they going to look like? The Cowboys, Witten's hurt now. That offensive line is in flux. What are they going to look like? They're going to be playing the Chargers. I believe that's actually Saturday, though. You might want to check that out. But a lot of games coming up on Friday. The Raiders play the Cardinals. The Cardinals, why are you giving Kevin Cobb another? You're really trying to get your money's worth. I understand. You know what? I'm not going to even harp on that. You're trying to get your money's worth. I know what you're doing. You paid him. You're probably regretting that you picked up that option this year. You're probably wishing you cut him. You didn't. You paid him the money. Now you want your money's worth. I get it. Good luck. That's all I can say. And that's going to do it for this episode. Again, we'll be back with more NFC South tomorrow. And we will be chronicling the Carolina Panthers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And that will wrap up that division when we're done there. And then we'll move on to the AFC South when we're done there. And so I thank you for joining me. Again, drop a message in the inbox in the lab room at gmail.com. Like me on Facebook, in the lab room on Facebook. Twitter handle at in the lab room on Twitter. That is my Twitter handle. I will see you again tomorrow. Same time, same place. See you tomorrow.